Okay, where are we? It's time. It's 4 o'clock, so we will start. So, as I said, welcome to the Zinyak ITIL Foundation training course. This is a fully accredited course, accredited by PeopleCert on behalf of Axelos. Normally we do it in a classroom situation or over a paid live webinar, but we're offering it free for our YouTube subscribers. As I said, all we have to do is to subscribe to the channel. Some copyright statements there. Axelos would like to remind you that ITIL is their registered trademark, and obviously the details are there, and you can see that the material's being sourced from ITIL Foundation, which is this book. Okay, so the official guidance, they like to call it, not manual. The reason they call it a guidance is because it's intended to guide you, to give you guidance, but you're not supposed to follow it like a manual. So you're not supposed to say, oh, it says this in the book, therefore we have to do this. Understand the principles and then apply them as appropriate in your organisation. Okay, so this is ITIL 4 Foundation. Often most people refer to it as version 4. Axelos officially call it ITIL 4. Same thing. The 4th iteration of ITIL. Just on the title, I refer to it as ITIL. I always have done, probably always will. When I did the Train the Trainer for ITIL 4 Foundation, I was in a room with a lot of other trainers, very experienced guys like myself. Some of them, going back, had written version 1 or version 2 of ITIL. And some of them called it ITIL, some of them called it ITIL, some of them called it ITIL. Axelos generally refer to it as ITIL, but we know what you mean, so call it whatever you want. But this is ITIL 4 Foundation. At the end of this course, today we may get through all the material, we might not quite get through it all, but there is a full 42 videos, 2.5 hours long. I got asked that question today. The videos on our YouTube channel, the full pre-recorded course is 2.5 hours long, so you can refer back to that. You can use that to finish it if we don't quite cover everything, or if you need to cover anything again that you didn't quite get the first time. When you're ready to take the exam, you can go to our website, zindiac.co.uk. You can see how you spell it there, Zindiac, and buy the exam voucher. With that, that's kind of the whole course package. So obviously you've had this free, the videos are free, but what you get in addition is you will get the official sample papers. There are 2 of those with the rationale, the answers, and why they're the right answers. You will get an ITIL Foundation glossary, so all the terms you need to know for the exam, and you get a summary of ITIL 4 as well, and most importantly, the exam code, which is what you will need to go onto the PeopleCert website. If you haven't got an account, you create an account on there, and there's a video telling you how to do that on our YouTube page. There's a video explaining everything you need to do in order to book your exam, and you should find that buying the exam voucher from us is the cheapest way to do it. It's the best value out there. Great. Okay, so the foundation exam is 60 minutes long. The pass mark is 26 out of 40, as you can see there, and you can see the various bits of the syllabus. And when you take it online with PeopleCert, obviously multiple choice, so A, B, C or D question, you pick your right answer, next question. You can mark questions and go back, but generally just go through them in order. When you're finished, you click on finish, it'll say, are you sure? If you missed any out, it would say you haven't answered question 12 and you could go back. And then there'll be 3 or 4 questions about the exam process, very quickly. Were you happy about booking the exam and so on? And then you will get your result. So you get your result basically immediately. It'll hopefully come up and say you've passed. It will say it's a provisional result, but if you have passed, you normally get confirmation often within an hour. but certainly within 24 hours you get the confirmation email with a link to the PeopleCert website where you can download your certificate. Hopefully it won't happen if you weren't to pass. Generally the confirmation takes a little bit longer. I think on the basis that if you pass, you're not going to object. If you haven't passed, and particularly if you say got 25, you might object, so they want to double check everything before they confirm it. And you'll get a breakdown as well. So rather than just getting you got 35 out of 40, you will get a breakdown along these lines. So for each of those 1, 2, 3 to 7, you'll get a mark. So for instance, for number 3, understand the 4 dimensions of service management, you can see there are 2 marks. If you got 1 question right, 1 question wrong, you'd obviously get 50%. So you come back and say 50%. So it gives you some sort of idea of how you've done. But obviously the thing you'll be most worried about is have I passed. And the other thing just on here, 2 more things. You can see the majority of the questions are at the bottom. Understand the 7 ITIL practices. We'll obviously come on to those. It's nearly half the exam. And the other thing, these BLs, BL1 and BL2, that's Bloom's level. Bloom's level 1 is simple recall. Bloom's level 2 is supposed to be slightly more difficult. So again, you can see there's more Bloom's level 2 questions, but you'll see that in the sample exam anyway. Some questions really are a matter of seconds. So yeah, where it says you've got 60 minutes for 40 questions, don't think that means a minute and a half a question. Some questions will take you literally a few seconds, 5 seconds maybe. In my experience of invigilating classroom examinations, the majority of people finish between about 20 minutes and 40 minutes. That's kind of the range of time most people take. If people finish in under 20 minutes, I'm usually a bit worried. I think they've rushed it a bit. And although they might pass, they maybe not quite secure as they might be. The people who take over 40 minutes, in all honesty, they tend to be the people who've had it so drilled into them at school that if you've got an hour, you should take an hour. They've kind of gone through it and finished it in half an hour, but then they just sit there going over the questions again and again and again because they've got an hour and they're going to use it. And you've got that option if you want. I normally, when I've got to the end and I've answered all the questions, I think, can I go back now? I've finish. But whatever you want to do, you're in control, obviously, of the exam. Right, so in terms of the agenda, you can see there we've got the key concepts of service management. So a general overview of really why ITIL. Why do we want to use ITIL at all? To improve service management. Then the key concepts of ITIL, you can see there the 4 dimensions, service value system, service value chain, and the guiding principles. So that's really the core introduction to ITIL, and we'll definitely get through both those 2 sections on the live course today. Okay, no worries about that. And then we go into the introduction to the ITIL practices, and you can see that for 15 of them, and we don't even cover all of them, so that's not all the ITIL practices. I'm thinking I should know how many there are now. But we don't cover them all. We're just covering 15, and that's literally just knowing the purpose. What is the purpose of incident management practice? To restore normal service operations as quickly as possible. So that's all you need to know. You need to be able to recognise the purpose and match it to an ITIL practice for 15 of them. And then for the 7 listed there, of which incident management is one, we need to know them in a bit more detail, and there'll be more questions. And that's really the meat of the exam. As we saw on the previous slide, there's 17 questions in there for the exam. Okay. Just before we get going, I just added this slide in today, but I think it's important for understanding. So what you can see on the left-hand side is a London Underground map. Yeah, and it's if you live in London or live in the UK and never been to London, or live anywhere and you've ever been to London, you'll recognise that map. If you live in another big city, New York, that's got an underground or subway, New York, Paris, Tokyo, Anywhere else that's got a metro system, an underground system, they have something similar, and it's an abstraction of the actual system. So on the right hand side of the slide, you can see a map, which is also a map of the London Underground, but it is a more accurate representation of where the actual tube lines go. And you can see it's much more, even if we zoom in, it's much more difficult to understand than the simplified, abstracted version. And what we're going to see as we go through the course, we go through ITIL, when we talk about the 4 dimensions model and the service value system, the service value chain, is they are abstractions of the real world to help us understand it, to help us talk about it and focus on different areas of service management. And that's kind of an important concept to grasp of what they are. So it's when we're talking about ITIL, when we're talking in ITIL terms about things like the 4 dimensions model and so on, service value system, it's just an abstraction of the real world to help us understand it. Okay, which brings us nicely onto the first abstraction, the service value system, and this is new for ITIL 4. If any of you have got experience of ITIL 3, ITIL version 3, or ITIL 2011, that used a different abstraction. So that used the service life cycle, service strategy, design, transition, operation, continual improvement, drawn as a circle. That was great. That was a big improvement on version 2, which was kind of everything just flying around on its own in a bit of a mess. But it kind of had this nice cycle that we talked about following, but in reality we didn't really follow that cycle. In reality, what we did was we did a bit of everything at the same time, and this is trying to better reflect that all aspects are going on at the same time. All aspects of service management are happening. We just, any individual might be focused on one bit, but generally service management and IT managed service is delivered by a team, quite often a very large team of people who are focused on different things. And depending on what your role is or your roles are, because we tend to have many roles, we'll be focused on a different thing. So the service value system, you can see very simply takes us from opportunity and demand on the left hand side through the service value chain to value on the right hand side. An important thing to understand at this stage is that in the past we've often talked about suppliers delivering value to customers. As a supplier, I deliver a product or a service to you, my customer, and I'm delivering value to you. In reality, that's not quite how it works. So in order to gain value, the customer has to do something. They have to interact with the product or service. So if I just find this, I've got a spare mobile phone here. So an old Samsung mobile here. So when I got this mobile from Vodafone, because they're my provider, the day it came in its nice box and I took it out, it's all nice, shiny and new. At that point, Vodafone haven't delivered any value to me as a customer. They've delivered a product and they've delivered access to their services. They've created an account and I can make phone calls. But in order to gain value, I actually have to make phone calls or use my phone to access the web or take photographs or do any of the other things that you can do with a mobile phone. And I have to continue to do that over 2 years because I'm signed up for a 2-year contract and I'm paying them a certain amount every month. So in order to gain value, I've got to continue to use the product and the services. And all services, all products are like that. You have to interact. However, the simplest one, you go into a coffee shop and buy a coffee, you only get value from that coffee if you actually drink it. I suppose you could argue you could put your hands around the cup and get some warmth, but you've still got to do something to gain value. You're not really gaining value just by kind of sitting there looking at it. Okay, so what we talk about is co-creation of value, and we'll talk about more about co-creation of value as we go through. But we go from opportunity to demand. So in that example I gave you with Vodafone, there's I had a demand, I needed a mobile phone for business, also personal use, and I'm sure you've all got a mobile phone. So there's the opportunity for suppliers to supply that demand and co-create value with their customers. The service value chain is all about how that happens. And obviously there's multiple ways of doing that. Staying with the mobile phone thing, I can take out a pay-as-you-go contract, I can take out a monthly contract, I can take out a SIM-only contract, I could buy my phone from Apple or Samsung or other provider, or I can get it as part of my package from Vodafone. There's lots of ways of going through that service value system, through the service value chain, which we'll drill down into later. And then around the outside, what have we got? We've got governance. Governance is the way the organisation, the service provider, makes sure it's doing the right thing. Yeah. So we often notice governance when it's not there, when it's missing. Classic example I like to use is Volkswagen. I'm sure you're all aware of the Volkswagen emissions scandal when they put some fancy software on their cars to fill the emissions tests. And I'm sure the people who did that, who were involved in writing the software, approving for it to go on their cars, they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were doing the best thing for their organisation. They didn't envisage that their organisation was going to get fined hundreds of millions of dollars as they were. But really, that's a failure of governance. Hopefully, if that decision had gone sufficiently high up in Volkswagen, someone would have realised, they would have spotted the risk, they would have realised that there was a risk that could happen, and they would have said, no, that it's not ethical apart from anything else. It doesn't meet our ethical way of wanting to work, so we won't do that. And that's ultimate governance. So if wherever you are in the organisation, if you've got people below you, you need to make sure they're doing the right thing. You can't be checking them every minute of every day. So if you're the chief exec of an organisation like Volkswagen, where you've got hundreds of thousands of people working for you, you can't be checking personally. So you put governance in place, checks and balances, in order to check that we are doing the right thing. So we've got that for service management. The practices give us more detail, and we've saw some of them before: incident management, problem management, change enablement, as it's now called, asset management, and so on. And they really provide the detail of more of kind of day-to-day activity. So they're important. That's where really the processes and procedures sit. But they allow for flexibility. So the way they're described in ITIL in terms of practices is very much objective based rather than how you do it. So it says, this is the objective. Incident management, we need to restore normal service operations as quickly as possible. How we do that, that's down to your products and services and processes and procedures that interact with them, and depending on what products and service you're delivering, obviously your restoring normal service operation will be different. Often in IT it might just be reboot your laptop. Oh, does it work again now? Okay, great. That's incident management, yeah, but it depends on what your products or service is. At the top, the guiding principles. Guiding principles really important because it's kind of the common example people use with guiding principles is if you're cooking any food, there's certain principles you would follow, such as wash your hands, and I'm sure we're probably all washing our hands a little bit more than normal over the last few months. But yeah, before you start, wash your hands, make sure your surfaces are clean, make sure you're using fresh ingredients. If you're cooking meat, make sure particularly things like chicken are thoroughly cooked through. White meat, the chicken, pork is thoroughly cooked through before we serve it. So there's certain principles that you would follow, and ITIL's no different. It's got some guiding principles, and we'll look at those. And again, there's 7 guiding principles now. and there's 6 questions in the exam. So basically 5 questions on a guiding principle and then 1 question on how they interact together. And finally, on this slide, in the service value system, we have continual improvement. And what you'll see in ITIL 4 is we have continual improvement in the service value system. We have continual improvement in the service value chain, and we have continual improvement in as an ITIL practice as well. So they're big on improvement. They really want you to improve. They really want things to get better, and they put it in everywhere. And the reason for that is simply, even if we were providing the absolute best possible service today, it wouldn't be the best possible service tomorrow because the world would have changed. Yeah, and our customers' requirements would have changed, or our competitors or our partners or something will have changed, and we'll need to change and adapt. And it also very much supports the idea of iterative delivery, of iterative development, which is a very agile approach. And obviously agile, as well as ITIL, probably then, well, on our YouTube channel is obviously Prince 2 Agile, which contains a big chunk of Scrum, and I do a lot of classroom-based Scrum courses as well, because Scrum's in particular and Agile generally very popular as a way of reducing risk and delivering something of value and then improving upon it. So it very much aligns with that. One other thing to say, the ITIL service value system, the statement on the slide there, that's basically, that statement and the definition of the service value system, that's what comes up in the exam. So understanding it's great, but you do need to be able to recognise the words on the slide. I'm not going to read words on the slide particularly. You can read them yourselves, obviously, but that's what you're going to see in the exam. I don't think I mentioned it. If you, we've got a couple of apps. An app, ITIL 4 Foundation Exam Prep app. It's available on the App Store. It's available on Google Play. If you go to either, whichever is appropriate for you, and search for Zindiac, you will find it along with our Prince 2 and Prince 2 Agile apps. In the ITIL app, I think there are 300 unique question answer combinations, but the app randomizes them. So basically, there's a million different combinations of things you could be asked with the different answer question and different wrong answers. So it really does prepare you for just being able to remember the stuff you need for the exam. Okay, now this is the 4 dimensions of service management, the 4 dimensions model. Any of you have done ITIL version 3. In ITIL version 3, we had the 4 aspects of service design, and that was people, process, partners, products, the 4 P's of service design. This is really that. And you can see, people, obviously number 1 with organisations and people. Processes, number 4, value streams and processes. Partners and suppliers, number 3. And what was products is now information and technology, but it's the same thing, they're just using different words for the same area. And really the main reason for having this model, having this diagram, is just to get you to think about all aspects of the service. So particularly in IT, if you're delivering an IT managed service, maybe a full IT managed service for office-based workers or maybe home-based workers now, with a laptop and or desktop, maybe a mobile phone, network services and applications running on a server, be it email, ERP, CRM, there's a tendency to focus on the technology that you're delivering, obviously. Yeah. And what this is trying to say is, that's important, obviously. But don't forget the technology, the information technology you need to deliver that service. So things like remote access for support, monitoring software, and so on. So the actual technology that we as service managers use, as well as what the end user uses. So they're both coming information and technology. Obviously, don't forget the organisations and people. How many people do we need on the service desk?
when's the service desk running? Is it going to be 24/7? Are we going to have follow the sun? And we'll talk about that if we get to the service desk practice. But all that organisations, people, how many server experts do we need? How many desktop experts we need? I went into I won't say which one, but a public sector organisation to deliver a course, and they were giving me a guided tour of the office, and I noticed they've got a lot of Apple Macs, which is quite unusual for a public sector organisation. And I commented on it and said, "Oh, got Apple Macs. That's very forward thinking." And they said, "Yeah, our IT director really likes them. He views them as being lower cost of ownership and so on." And I said, "Oh, well, how's that going? Are you realising that lower cost of ownership? Are you realising those benefits?" And they said, "Well, the issue we've got is our people, our desktop support people, all know Windows. So if one of the Windows PCs goes wrong, we can fix it. We know how to fix it. We've got those skills. None of them know Mac. So if the Mac goes wrong, we can't help." So that was a bit of an issue for them. And obviously that's why organisations and people's there, because if you were focusing on that dimension and you were going to have Apple Mac desktops, then you would make sure that you had some a means to support. And it might not be your own people coming onto partners and suppliers. It may be that you outsource that bit. You say, "No, we've got a partner who can support the Apple Macs, and we don't need to do it ourselves." So again, it's getting you to think about a holistic view of how you deliver the service. And you can see in there the middle, the products and services, and right in the middle, ultimately what we're trying to deliver, or what we're trying to do, is co-create value with our customer. That's the ultimate end goal. It's not to have 100% availability on a server, or even a network, or the latest desktop PC, laptop. It's to co-create value, and it's sufficiently understanding our customer's business and how we can co-create value. That's the important thing, and that's where really the value streams and processes come in. Understanding how the customer will realise value, how they will get value from this service, and that's where the value streams and processes come in. And then round the outside you can see PESTLE, which is an acronym for political, economical, social, technological, legal and environmental factors. So again, each of the 4 dimensions of service management will be affected by those factors, those factors listed there. So for instance, technological factors, obviously if new technology comes out, new software, new hardware, that will help us deliver a better service. Potentially we might change the way we deliver the service. I'm trying to think where the whole COVID thing would come in, it doesn't really matter whether you fit it in environmental, political or social. You could fit it in any or all of those, but obviously the current situation across pretty much all of the world with coronavirus is that many more people are working from home, and I know many of my friends and ex-colleagues are working from home, and a lot of them have got a new laptop, or have had faster broadband fitted at home, or have had to get used to using some sort of software, be it Zoom or WebEx or any of the other tools that allow us to do video conferencing. So they can all affect the service. So again, it's the main thing on here is it's to make sure we think in a holistic way, and particularly if you're delivering an IT service, you don't just focus on the technology. Yes, that's important, but the other things are as well. So we want to look at all those things. So we're now coming on to key concepts of service management. Excuse me while I have a quick drink. Okay, so as you can see here, we have a definition of service management, a set of specialised organisational capabilities for enabling value for customers in the form of services. And where we have on the slide a term and a definition like that in that light blue coloured box, that's indicative that that is a term that is in the syllabus that could come up in the exam. And typically the way they examine that, the way they ask a question on that, is to say either what is the best definition of service management, and it will give you that definition, and then it will give you 3 other definitions, usually of other bits of ITIL. Or they will say, what is a set of specialised, and they'll give you the definition, and they'll say, is it service management or value or 3 other things. And basically that's what the app does. The app gives you lots of questions like that so you can get proficient at answering them. So developing the specialised organisation capabilities requires an understanding of the nature of value. And you can see at the bottom they've got a definition, the perceived benefits, usefulness and importance of something. And there's 2 things there really that I'd pick up on. One is perceived benefits. So we all perceive things in different ways. So the perceived benefit to you of your mobile phone will be different from me. The perceived benefit of you, if you've got a flask for water, will be different from me. My laptop, you can't see my laptop, I've got a MacBook, and the reason I got this particular MacBook is because it doesn't have a fan. Okay, so it's completely silent. So when I'm recording videos or I'm doing online live webinars such as this, there isn't a fan in the background kind of whirring away, giving a nasty sound in the background. So it's completely silent. So for me, that was a significant benefit. That is literally the reason I bought this MacBook. But that might not be a big thing for you. That might, you might not perceive that as a benefit because you don't record videos online. The other thing that I think they're missing really that should be in there is cost. Because, if I offered you an iPhone 11, the latest iPhone, they're about £1,000, aren't they? So if I offer you an iPhone 11 for £1,000, you might go, I don't know, you might have one, you might not have one, you might have I've got an iPhone 8 I'm using for the camera here. You may or may not view that as being good value. If I offered you a brand new iPhone 11 for £10, I think pretty much all of you would think that was good value. You'd think, yeah. In fact, your thought process would probably switch from thinking about value to thinking about risk, and you'd be thinking, well, if I give him my £10, am I actually going to get an iPhone 11, or is this too good to be true? Or if we were face to face and you could see the iPhone 11, you could see it was real, then you might be thinking, well, is it stolen, or is it right? What's wrong with it? Where's the catch? So you'd be thinking about risk. But from a pure value perspective, if it costs less, generally we perceive a high level of value. So undoubtedly, cost is part of the way we perceive the benefits. At least it affects that. I've mentioned before, the purpose of an organisation is to create value for stakeholders, and ITIL is very much focused on that co-creation of value, making sure that we co-create value for our customers, and that we understand that different stakeholders in our customer will have different perceptions of value, and that's very important. And we'll talk about different levels, sponsor, customer and user, later in the course, and how they might perceive value differently. So we're an organisation, very broad definition of an organisation, from an individual to a group of people. Again, I won't read the definition there, but it's important to recognise, I think, that in ITIL, an individual can be an organisation. So we might refer to the organisation that is the service desk, But you could have just one person, one service desk agent on the service desk. It's still an organisation in ITIL terms. So that's it. Might be something that you need to remember. So how is value created? So I mentioned this before. There was a time when service providers saw themselves as delivering value to their customers. I deliver an IT service. I give you a laptop. You can use that laptop to send emails. I'm delivering value to you. A more modern and more rounded view of that relationship is that it's a co-creation of value. And the more that the customer interacts with the service, the more they're going to get value out of that service. And I think that really helps us with training and thinking about how we facilitate users and customers' use of our service. Yeah, how easy is it to use our service? Is it very easy or not? I was in London at the weekend. We had a short break in London, and for various reasons we decided to use the Lime bikes, which are they're push bikes, they're pedal bikes, but with they've got a battery and have some varying degrees, depending on which one you get, of assistance from the battery. So it just means you can kind of go a bit quicker, a bit further with a bit less effort. So and given that it was very hot in London out the weekend, that kind of helped us out. But once we registered, it was very, very easy to use. You literally had the app on your phone, you went up and there was an RFID tag on the bike and you scanned it, it would unlock the bike and away you went. We did have a couple of times when we turned up and it wouldn't unlock. I think that's when the battery's flat. But other than that, it was really easy to use. When I started my career in IT early on, when we delivered a new system, a big part of delivering a new system would be training, helping people use the new system, teaching them how to use the new system. And that kind of fell away a little bit when Windows came out and it's all intuitive, you don't need it. And I think for a while, people struggled with it really. It was kind of a bit intuitive, but not for everyone. And you'd often get a new version of Office and people just carry on using the features and functionalities that had been in the previous version because they couldn't learn the new stuff. So they were just kind of like stuck in using the old versions. I think a lot more now. You can find things on YouTube, training videos. Like I said, I'm using Ecamm Live here. I didn't particularly need it, but there's half a dozen videos on YouTube teaching me how to use it if I got stuck. I did find it pretty intuitive and could use it pretty much straight away. But we do need to think about that. In order to gain value, the customer's going to have to use our service. So are they, the easier they find it, the more they're going to use, the more value they're going to gain, the more they're going to feel that however much money, assuming they're paying us, that they're getting that value, and are more likely to come back and also tell their friends and so on. And we'll get more business out of it. So value is co-created through an active collaboration between providers and consumers, as well as other organisations. So it's not just mono. Quite often there's a mix of multiple organisations involved. Just very simply, the Lime bike I gave you. Obviously, I'm the customer. Lime are my primary supplier, but it only works if I've got a mobile phone. So Vodafone were involved in that. Apple were involved in it because I've got an Apple phone, an iPhone. And that's very much in the modern digital world. There's very often multiple organisations involved in delivering a service. Key message there is obviously you can see when provisioning service, an organisation takes on the role of service provider. When we're receiving it, it's the role of service consumer, and they're the key definitions. Like I said, I won't go through all those. What I'm trying to do today is just give you a good understanding. Here you can see the 3 levels of primary roles within the organisation.
that I mentioned before. So we've got sponsor, customer, and user. So sponsor is the role that authorises the budget. That's the key thing. They sign off on the budget. Yes, we can spend £1 million on this IT service, or yes, we can spend £12, I think it was, for a day of cycling around on a line bike or several line bikes. The customer is the role in the organisation that defines the requirements. Now, obviously, sometimes the customer and the sponsor might be the same individual. If they're different, typically the sponsor is more senior, because they can spend the company's money, whereas the customer's just defining the requirements for the service. They may be the same. And then at the bottom, we've got the user, the role that actually uses the service. So in my line bike example, I was sponsor or co-sponsor with my wife. We had a little chat about whether it was worth the money or not, and I went, yeah, okay, and decided to pay it. We were a joint customer because we jointly defined the requirements. We decided to go for a Lime rather than using the Santander bikes, partly because I've got a dodgy knee at the moment. I can't run, which is a nightmare for me. But we thought the electrical assistance might just stop me damaging it anymore. And then we were obviously both users because we both cycled. So we both fulfilled all those roles, but often in an organisation, your chief exec, finance director, maybe a chief information officer might be the sponsor defining the budget. Customer could be chief technology officer or a line of business manager, sales director, HR manager, depending on what the service is. They may well also be users, but typically the users are people using the service. And do think about the requirements of each. You will focus on the sponsor, obviously, the customer because they're more senior, but don't forget the users, because if the users aren't happy, they'll let the customer and sponsor know and it'll make them unhappy. So you do have to think about all your stakeholders, make sure everybody's kept happy. And not just those stakeholders, but wider stakeholders, individual employees of the provider organisation, so our organisation, and there's lots of evidence, lots of research to show that if our employees are happy, they provide a better service. And I'm sure you've got examples of that where you go into certain organisations and the employees are happy, they seem to be enjoying their job, they deliver a better service. Whereas if you go into an organisation where they're a bit, what time is it? When can I go home? They're probably providing not such a good service. So don't forget about those. Partners and suppliers, talk about those, really important. It should be seamless to our customer. If we're using partners and suppliers, if we've outsourced something, if we're using cloud service providers, third parties to do everything else. Often in IT, certainly we'll outsource, say, break fix for the physical hardware, but that should all be seamless. It should be seamless to the customer. From the customer's perspective, they should view it as one organisation delivering a seamless service to them. If we've got investors and shareholders, obviously they want to see a return on their investment, or they'll go off and invest in someone else. Government organisations, regulators, pretty much all industry sectors have their own regulators, and we need to make sure we keep them happy. So I need to make sure I keep PeopleCert and Axelos happy. Otherwise, they'll take my accredited training organisation accreditation away from us, and then I won't be able to deliver these courses. If you're a bank, you obviously have to keep the banking regulators happy, and so on across different groups. And social groups, this is important. What is it? Cancel culture. They talk about now. Cancel culture. We don't want to be cancelled. We don't want a Twitter pile on our organisation because we failed to deliver service. So don't forget social groups. I don't know if I should mention them. I'll be kind and not mention them by name. A certain holiday company. My parents had booked to go away on holiday on the 4th of May. and I think they've just more or less on the 4th of August they finally got their money back from the cancelled holiday. There's a Facebook group of very unhappy customers of that particular travel company, and lots of people saying how bad they are and saying never, don't use them, and we'll never travel with them again. And I can't remember what it is, but they say a happy customer will tell 10 people, and an unhappy customer will tell 100, 1,000, whatever the number is, many more. So to be careful, we need to make sure we keep everyone as happy as possible. Service and products. So you can see there, we do need to know the definition of service for the exam. We don't need to know the definition of a product for the exam. Service and means of enabling value co-creation by facilitating outcomes that customers want to achieve without the customer having to manage specific costs and risks. So, if I provide you with an email system, the email system is a product, it's an output. The outcome is you can send and receive emails. And that hopefully gives you some value and means you'll maybe pay me some money, although there's lots of free email out there, so maybe not. Maybe I need to make the money in a different way through advertising. And services an organisation provider are based on one or more of its products. So products can be physical things like an iPhone, a laptop, desktop, but it's also kind of how we package things up. So we might have often things like a gold product, a silver product, a bronze product. With you see that a lot with online software. They always called it gold, silver, bronze, but they have tiers. Basic, professional, super pro, or whatever. They give them different names, and you get a few more features for a bit more money. So they're all products. It's the way we package things up. As it says, they're complex, and typically they're not all visible to the customer. If you're particularly interested in that, you can go on our ITIL Managing Professional Transition course, which is on our YouTube channel. There's more details about that and the line of visibility in terms of what the supplier shows the customer and what the customer shows the supplier. And they talk about the line of visibility. I think of it as behind the curtain. So what do we want to keep behind the curtain that the customer can't see, and what's out front, what's the show that they can see? What do we keep behind the curtain that they can't see? So a service offering. So again, service providers present their services to consumers in the form of service offerings, which describe one or more services based on one or more products. So we might have a CRM product, an ERP product, an email product, a remote working product. They can all be products, and then different service offerings. So ones I've come across that are quite common in the past. So we may have a product which is desktop. So everyone gets a desktop. You can have a laptop device, but then we have service offerings which are maybe some form of engineer who needs a more meaty laptop or desktop because they're doing more processing, they're developing software or developing the company's products, so they need something with more power. We might have a sales offering for our sales force or mobile workforce who definitely need a laptop, but maybe need a lighter laptop or slightly different functionality as part of the product. So you can have, it's two ways of kind of slicing and dicing what we offer. So we can break it up into products, and then each product can be broken up into a different service offering in that way. And again, you can see there, service offering, a description of one or more services designed to address the needs of a target customer group, whoever that might be. It may include goods, access to resources such as the service desk or support, and service actions. And so a service action could be billing or
refresh, and if you take out your mobile phone and you get a new mobile phone every 2 years or every 18 months, whatever it might be, that will be a service action as well. Service relationships. Service relationship, fairly simple, like any other relationship between two organisations or more, two or more organisations to co-create value. And in a service relationship, organisations take on the roles of service provider and service consumer, but it can go both ways. So it may be that if I worked for, say, HP, I'm providing some sort of desktop managed service to Vodafone. Vodafone are providing a mobile telephone service to I'm trying to think of a network provider, and the network provider is providing a network service to HP. Yeah, so there's multiple relationships there, and I'm sure you're aware of those in the businesses that you provide. It's not just a one-way service. We can have it going both ways. And then we've got the definition there: a cooperation between service provider and service consumer. Service relationships include provision, consumption, and relationship management. Service provisioning, activities performed by an organisation to provide services. So it's everything we need to do. So again, just on the mobile phone service, in order to provide a mobile phone service, Vodafone, there are all the mobile phone providers available, O2 and so on. They need to provide me with a phone, but they also need to have their masts in place so that I can connect to them and make phone calls, and anything else they might provide. They like to do the 4Play thing now, don't they? Providing TV services and broadband and mobile service. I'm trying to think what the fourth one is. Video on demand now, broadband. But yeah, multiple different services and different things to provision those and get them working. So yeah, management of providers' resources, access to resources for users, so that's access to the mobile phone network, fulfillment of agreed service actions, so that might be sending me a bill, sending me an invoice every month, and taking the direct debit to pay, service level management and continual improvement, and we'll talk about service level management in the practices. And service provision may also include supplying of goods, so that's like your mobile phone or your desktop or any other physical thing that they need to provide as part of the service. Service consumption, so that's what the service consumer does. So in the mobile phone example, I am the service consumer. I am consuming the service when I use my phone, particularly if I make a phone call or send a message or whatever it might be. That's when I'm consuming it. Watch a video on my phone maybe. I'm consuming the service. Service relationship management is the joint activities. So that's where we review the service. So that's much more when it's two organisations, bigger organisations working together, where we're reviewing the SLAs. Typically when I've performed that service relationship management role with big customers, we're going to have a meeting with them once a month, and we review the SLA performance. This is the SLA, this is how we've performed against it, and we talk about their business, we talk about their business objectives and how we can add more value, co-create more value together, what we need to do, how we need to improve our services so that they get more value out of them. And if you're a service provider, you are in competition. Even if you're an internal IT department and you think, well, we're an internal IT department, someone somewhere is looking at the services you provide and saying, could we get the same level of service for less money, cheaper, or could we get a better level of service for the same amount of money, or maybe even a better level of service for less money? Yeah, and if they can, they'll outsource. If they've already outsourced and you're the outsource provider, they'll insource. They'll go to a different outsource provider. You're always in competition, and if you don't continually improve, if you don't continually increase the value you're providing to your customer, they will go elsewhere, because that's the nature of the world. Yeah, I'm sure you're more than aware of that. The service relationship model, you can see they're this is a very simplified model of organisation A providing some service to organisation B. So it's rather like a manufacturing supply chain. It's the service value chain going from organisation B, C to D, and in between each one we've got a service relationship. Fairly simple, straightforward model to review there. We'll just do the value now, and then we might take a little break, give everyone a little break, just for 5 minutes to grab a coffee or whatever. So value, outcomes, costs and risks. The key message here really is that the items on the right, so the supported outcomes, costs removed, risks removed, need to outweigh the affected outcomes, the costs introduced and the risks introduced. And if they're greater, then that's when value is created. So supported outcomes, I can make a phone call, I can send an email, I can... if I've got a finance application, I use Xero for my business, online cloud-based finance application, so I can keep all my records. I can file my VAT return to HMRC and pay the correct amount of VAT and so on. They're the supported outcomes. The cost removed, well, the cost of me doing it a different way. In that case, maybe paying an accountant to do it all, or using Excel, or trying to write the application myself, which would be a bit of a nightmare. Risks removed, well, certainly maybe some of the risks removed are that I'm not up to date with the latest accountancy practices, and I won't, I might get things wrong, but Xero, because they're providing that accountancy software to multiple people, they'll keep up to date, so they're removing risk. Affected outcomes. So on the other side, affected outcomes. Is there anything negative? Is there anything I can't do with Xero? Certainly, I do use an accountant, and when they kind of lock the accounts, then that means I can't change anything, which is sometimes a bit frustrating. But I'm sure it's safer. Costs introduced. Well, I have to pay Xero. It's not a huge amount of money. But I do pay them a certain amount of money every month for use of the cloud service. And risks introduced. So primarily the risk introduced would be if I couldn't access the system, because it's cloud-based, if for some reason I couldn't access the internet or the World Wide Web, or if the network connection was down or their servers were down, that would be the main risk. Or maybe if somebody could somehow hack into my account, the security aspects of it there, maybe risks introduced. Whereas if I was doing my accounts on paper, but somebody could break into my office, so different risks. But that's it. So if the things on the right outweigh the things on the left, then that's when we create value. And I did say we'd have a break now. So what I'm going to do, it's 1 minute to 5. I think when I put the break slide up, it'll say 10 minutes, but we'll just take 5 minutes. So I'll just take a 5-minute break, let everybody stretch the legs so they don't miss anything, and then we'll start again at 5:05. So 5 past the hour, or if you're on the half hour in India, then 5 past the half hour. So in 5 minutes' time, we'll start again and carry on.
Hi, welcome back. So I can see, oh yeah, we've got a few people online now. So like I said, if you've got any questions, just drop them in the comments box. And if I don't pick them up straight away, I'll certainly answer any questions at the end. Right, so we're on to outputs and outcomes. And I mentioned these before. An output, a tangible or intangible delivery of an activity. So typically in an IT sense, it's your system, your IT system, ERP, CRM, or your laptop or your mobile phone. It's something tangible. It's something you can touch. An outcome, the result for a stakeholder enabled by that. So I can send the email, I can keep my accounts, I can produce my product if I'm using an ERP system or whatever it might be. I can take a photograph, record a video, hold an on live stream as I'm doing today. So that's the outcome that we're looking for. Costs, I mentioned costs, and costs are an important part of value. And as we said, the costs removed need to be greater than the costs imposed. Again, I won't read the whole slide, but it is important that we understand that dynamic and understand really what costs are introduced to the organisation. So yes, we might be. It's not just what we charge them. Yeah. So if we're having monthly service review meetings, last a couple of hours, then they have to send someone along to that meeting, and that's going to cost them some money. I did a number of years ago now work for a management consultant firm where we were encouraged to go into our customers and spend more time on site and get face to face with customers. And after about a week, the customer banned us from their building because we were taking up so much of their time. So you do need to think about the amount of time and the cost it's going to cost the customer, what you're introducing as a cost as well as what you're removing. Risk again, risk removed, risk imposed. I mentioned some of these before. Risk really is just uncertainty. It's a possible event. So if we were doing pure risk management, if we're doing an MOR course, management of risk, we'd talk about it being uncertainty. The obvious example is if and when you take the ITIL certification exam, there is uncertainty about the outcome. You hopefully will pass, but you might fail. So there's the opportunity to pass. There is the risk threat that you might fail. The only way to guarantee that you won't fail the ITIL exam is to not take it. Yeah, if you don't take it, you can't fail it. But unfortunately, you can't pass it if you don't take it. And most of you will want the opportunity to pass it, and therefore will be prepared to take the risk that you might fail it. And what you try and do is maximise your chances of passing and minimise your chances of failure. And the way you maximise chances of passing is certainly attending this live webinar, maybe reviewing our videos online, buying our app and doing the practice exams, and ultimately taking the 2 official sample papers. You can, if you get to that point and you're still a bit nervous, there is the option of purchasing the Take 2 insurance. So the Take 2 insurance basically means that if you do fail, you don't have to pay for a second exam. You get that covers the cost. So whereas the first exam's £200, the insurance I think it's 35. He says, trying to remember, which is obviously a lot less than 200. But if you pass first time, then as with all insurance, if you don't use it, but if it's peace of mind, if it helps you relax in the exam, then that might help. So think about the risks we're removing from the customer, but also any risks that are imposed that they need to deal with themselves. Utility and warranty, this is taken straight out of version 3, it hasn't changed. Utility, the functionality offered by a product or service to meet a particular need, and warranty, the assurance that a product or service will meet the agreed requirements. So functionality, you could have, it tells you, again, just because I'm looking at one, functionality of a mobile phone. It can make calls, it can take photographs, it's maybe got two cameras, can it do videos, can it access the web, can it access 4G, 5G. Mine can't access 5G, I don't think any iPhones can yet. I think you need a Samsung if you want to do 5G. So that's the functionality, but the warranty is what about the assurance that it's going to work. I had a couple of phones back, I had a Huawei phone that the utility looked great. It had high specs on on the processor, on the memory, on the camera, it all looked great, but it just drained battery. A battery would last 2 hours and then I'd have to recharge it. It just had no battery life on it at all. It was dreadful from that point of view. So from a warranty perspective, didn't really matter how great the functionality was. It wasn't really very usable as a mobile phone because the battery just didn't last. And you kind of need it to last a day, I feel. If you can charge it overnight and then it lasts all day. That's certainly what I do with my watch. And I think my watch, depends what I'm doing, might even last 2 days if I'm not going for a run or whatever. But yeah, they're the two things, and we need to make sure we're balancing both aspects. Okay, so we're coming on to, that was just a general overview of service management. So that's kind of the why ITIL. That's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to co-create value for our customer. Talked about things we need to think about, such as risks and costs and utility and warranty. That's why we need ITIL. So we're coming on to 4 dimensions of service management, and we're going to look at each of these in turn: organisations and people, information technology, partners and suppliers, value streams and processes. So organisations and people, it's really about, have we got the right people, and are they, in terms of skills, knowledge and experience, and are they organised in the right way? Have we got the right structures? If you've ever worked for an organisation where a new chief exec comes in, you'll know that very often what they do is when they come in, they reorganise. They say, oh, well, we were split into 3 divisions and now we're going to be split into 4 functions, and they change things around. Sometimes it makes a big difference, sometimes it doesn't make very much difference at all, but we need to think about what's the most effective way. Very common organisational structure for IT would be to have a server team, a network team, a desktop team, a security team, but you don't have to do it like that. You can do it different ways. You might base it more around geography. You might have the New York team, the London team, the Tokyo team, if that was applicable for your service, for your customers. Or you might have something completely different. So on the slide again, it's got all the things we need to think about: roles and responsibilities, formal organisation structures, required staffing and competences, what the staff can do. Do we need to train them? Have they got skills, knowledge and experience? Don't underestimate the importance of culture. Certainly when I do Agile courses, when I do Scrum courses, I really emphasise the importance of culture. We often refer to the ABC of culture: attitude, behaviour, culture. What is culture? It's the combined behaviours of everyone in the organisation. What determines people's behaviour? Their attitude. And I think you can see that with some of the things that are going on at the moment in the wider world about whether whether people are wearing masks or not, or want to wear masks or not, or whether socially distancing, and all the other things that we've been asked to do, certainly in the UK and maybe in your country as well. People's attitude about whether that's a good thing or not a good thing. I've got to say, I don't like wearing a mask, but where I legally have to, I will, because I guess my attitude is I follow the law. So but yeah, don't underestimate the importance of culture. That's very, very important. Lou Gershner wrote, who used to run IBM, wrote a book called Teaching the Elephant to Dance, in which he outlined the importance of culture. So you can probably find that on Amazon if you're interested. So here we can see things to think about. These are sort of things that might come up in the exam. Again, we've got a structure or system of authority. So that's important when we come on to things like change enablement. Who has the authority to authorise the change? Who has the authority to spend the money? And depending on how much money, how big the change, it'll be a different person in the organisation, or should be. Yeah. So I might have authorisation to spend, I don't know, up to £10,000, but if it's above that, you need to go to my boss. But if it's above 100,000, then you need to go to her boss, and so on. Yeah. So we need to know and understand that. Obviously, focusing on the effectiveness of the organisation. We've got the capacity, we've got the competency in the organisation to deliver the service, and we've got the right culture. And different organisations will need different cultures. I worked with nuclear power stations. They had a very safety-focused culture, as you can imagine they would, and as we would all want them to. They were absolutely safety obsessed. And generally organisations who are dealing with people's lives, whether it's nuclear power stations, railways were much the same. If you work with medical, the NHS or your whatever medical provider in your country is, they're very risk averse, because if they get something wrong, a person could die or several people could die. Where it's just money, people tend to take more risk because it's just money. So think about how that culture. Yeah. So there we've got again. So the attitudes there. I talked about attitude behaviour shows shared values and attitudes. Trust and transparency. Very important, that transparency for two reasons really. One is it helps build trust. If we're hiding something, then it's why are you hiding something? There must be something wrong. Why are you not telling us? There's something wrong. But also the idea that if we're transparent, if we share problems, if we share information, then we get more eyes, more people can view it, and therefore we might get a better solution. And then we've got leaders, champions, and advocates. My wife works in a primary school, and she often talks about leaders in the class, and she's talking about the children. So obviously you've got the teachers and assistants and so on there, but the leaders in a class from the children, they very much set the culture. And if the leaders are kind of hardworking, dedicated pupils, then the other pupils kind of follow them. If the leaders are not hardworking, not dedicated, like to mess around, like to show off, whatever, then it can be a very difficult class to control. And it's the children who pick the leaders. As much as the teachers might like to say, well, make the children pick. Leaders are very important in all organisations. So in terms of people, I won't read the whole slide out. We've got a number of points on there. T-shaped, where it talks about T-shaped people, what it's talking about is people with a broad range of skills, but a depth of knowledge in certain skills. Yeah. So I've got a wide range of IT skills. I've got 30 years, as you can probably tell by my hair. IT knowledge and skills, knowledge, and experience in IT. So a very wide range, but in certain areas, I've got a greater depth of knowledge in ITIL, service management, and Prince 2 and Prince 2 Agile. As you can imagine, I've got that deep, so that's where the T-shape comes in. So broad breadth, but specialists in different areas. And that's generally what we need in a modern organisation. What we don't want is people who are kind of like, I-shaped who can only do one thing, and if we don't need them to do that, they can't do anything else. Yeah, we want people who can do whatever we need them to do, and if we need a specialist in an area, then we've got sufficient specialists, and we can move on to, as we'll see later, kind of cone-shaped people as well. We've got multiple specialisms. And avoiding silos. So I talked about having the server team, the network team, the desktop team, security team. Great to have specialists in an area working together, but what we don't want is that situation where the server team sees the network team as the enemy. The network team see the desktop team as the enemy, and we get that silo mentality. We need to keep a lookout for that and make sure that doesn't happen. That we're all part of the bigger team and we're all working together for the greater good. Ultimately, co-creating value for our customers. Information and technology. So, two really key things on information technology. There is the information and technology that we deliver to our customers as part of the service, and there is the information and technology we use ourselves to deliver the service. So they're the two key areas. They're the two key things we need to think about, and it is not just the technology but the information. So IT, information technology, it contains information, but the information itself is important, and making sure we've got the right information. And again, just with what's going on in the world at the moment with COVID, there's lots of discussion going on about whether the information is correct. Is the number of tests, we claim to have done 100,000 tests. Have we actually done 100,000 tests, or have we only done 50,000 tests and 50,000 were sent out but never came back? And so have we got accurate information? We need to make sure we've got good, accurate information, because we're going to make decisions. Either we're going to make decisions on the information we're using to deliver the service, or our customer is going to make decisions about their business based on the information we're providing as part of the service. So we do need to look at the integrity of that information. So as I said, technology supporting service management, big long list, and technologies supporting an IT service. So supporting service management is supporting us delivering the service. Supporting an IT service is what we are likely to deliver to our customers. So clearly you can see from that list, we're not delivering, or not necessarily, and probably not delivering all those things to our customer. I've certainly never delivered blockchain to a customer. I might do in the future. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I've just never done it myself. Done many of the other things, certainly IT architecture, applications, databases, communication systems, done all those, definitely. And again, on the other side, we're probably using some subset of those things to deliver the service. You might get a question around what's in each one. There's some things which I think are, definitely worth memorising, and then there's others where you just go, unless you've got photographic memory. If you've got photographic memory, memorise that slide. If you haven't, like me, get a rough idea, and you don't need 100% to pass. So you just need 26 out of 40. So things to consider. What information is managed by the service? What do we need to manage the service, as I said? How will the information be protected, managed, archived, disposed of? So, particularly, protect is important. There's a whole course, Resilia, you can do on cyber resilience and looking at cyber security, protecting it, and also protection, detection, and correction. And we will touch on that in this course. And the information security practice obviously goes into more detail. I haven't mentioned that actually. For each practice, they've now produced a guide. So rather than like the foundation guide I showed you before, you can buy either a hard copy manual or a PDF copy if you want to drill down. So if you're in a role where you have particular responsibilities and you want more detail on a particular role and help on a particular role, then you can purchase a practice guide, if that makes sense. Information architecture, yeah, so looking at the availability, reliability, accessibility. Can we access it anytime, any place, anywhere? Timeliness, how long does it take to access it? So sometimes you can access anytime, any place, anywhere, but if it takes too long, you start trying to access it, and then it's it's of no use to you. Yeah, you need it quite timely. I think you probably come across something like on your phone sometimes. You try and get some information about something that's happening right now, and if you don't get the information quickly enough, the opportunity is gone. And relevance of the information. Again, we don't want to create a haystack that we then have to find the needle in. So we don't want to overload people with information when they just need a particular bit of it. And we obviously need to comply with legislation such as GDPR legislation. And pretty much everyone in the world needs to comply with GDPR. So obviously it's a European Union legislation, but if you want to sell services or receive services from an organisation in the European Union, or and an organisation can be one person, so a citizen, then you need to comply with GDPR. So, there you go. It pretty much applies to everyone. I won't read that slide out. You've got access to that slide. It's in the pre-recorded videos. You can read it, take a copy if you want to go through that. But it's just technological consideration, so you can read all those things and decide what the ticks are. Kind of, we want it. So is the organisation willing to accept the risk? We want them. Yeah, that should be good. Does the technology introduce new risks? Well, hopefully not. Or the risks it introduces are acceptable. That's why there's a cross. Partners and suppliers. It's really two terms for the same thing. Some organisations I've worked in differentiate them, so they talk about partners and they talk about suppliers, and they slightly different groups. Others just talk about suppliers, others just talk about partners. But any third-party organisation that is helping us provide services, either we're paying them money or not, but they're partners and suppliers. And you can see here there are different forms. So across the bottom of the slide, they're talking about three different forms. So goods supply. So the partner or supplier is providing goods, service delivered to us, or a service partnership where we're working more closely together. So rather than the partner supplying a service to us, it's more a partnership of equals where we're working together to provide a service to another third party, to our customer. Output responsibility. If it's the goods supply, then the supplier, they're responsible for providing the goods. It's down to them. If it's service delivery, it's the service provider. It's the same. It's down to them. It's a service partnership. We're jointly responsible. Outcome responsibility. In the first two is us. We are the customer of the partner. Yeah. So it's not talking about our end customer. We are the customer. Again, in service partnership, we're jointly responsible for the outcome. And you can see in terms of formality, for the goods supply, we've probably got a contract, maybe an invoice. We've placed an order. They provide us with the goods. They send us an invoice. We pay it. For service delivery, much the same, but there's probably some sort of service agreement, SLA, involved. And with a service partnership, much more about shared goals, maybe more flexible agreements, and maybe focus more on our ultimate end customer. So different forms of relationship, different forms of formality. Again, it may come up in the exam. You don't really need to. Hopefully, you can understand that rather than just memorise it. And answering the question should be fairly straightforward. SIAM, there is a whole methodology around SIAM, and in terms of service management, there are multiple methodologies that work with ITIL. So as well as SIAM, you've got COBIT, you've got DevOps, you've got Verism, multiple IT for IT. There's lots of other frameworks and methodologies that you can use with ITIL, but really ITIL is the de facto standard for service management worldwide. Yeah, it's absolutely a worldwide standard, and the others don't really say use us instead of ITIL. It's more use us with ITIL if you need to. SIAM's something you can do, and really you can see here they've on the slide now again they've got those classic areas of desktop network, server security. When outsourcing kind of first started, what organisations tended to do was either outsource everything or insource everything, and then they thought, oh, well, that's a bit binary. What we'll do is we could just outsource bits, or we could outsource to different organisations. So we can outsource our desktop to one organisation, but outsource our network to a different one, outsource our server to a different one, and have a more of a best of breed solution, which is great. But then you're potentially managing multiple organisations, multiple contracts. That takes more of your time. In the balance kind of goes back a bit that way. The costs introduced go up a bit because you're managing so much. So the service integrator gives us one organisation to deal with. So we would have contracts with each of the suppliers, but those contracts would be managed for us by the service integrator, and that's in simple terms what SIAM is. Like I said, there's a whole methodology around it, courses you can take, and certifications you can get if you so wish. Partners and suppliers, when we're selecting partners and suppliers, we need to make sure we get the right one, and it's not just about are they providing the product we need or the service we need at the lowest price. Lowest price isn't necessarily the only thing that we need to consider. We need to consider things like risk as well, but also things like corporate culture. Does our corporate culture match their corporate culture? Are we going to work well together? Are we very formal? Are they very formal as well? Or are they very agile, so we need to work in an agile way? And it can sometimes come down to how people dress and the formality of that. I remember in 2000 when the web was really kicking off, and there were a lot of internet entrepreneurs then and new web companies starting, and I was working for a hardware reseller, selling hardware and some software and services. And at that time I was still very much suited and booted, white shirt, tie, suit. And I was going into meetings with people who were wearing like Motorhead t-shirts, shorts, and Doc Martens, and it's kind of there was too much of a difference there, and that's when I stopped wearing white shirts, started wearing coloured shirts. That was my maybe didn't always wear it. Now I think I always wore a tie then. I don't when I'm training, but you do think about corporate culture, and the other things on there. Again, I won't read the whole slide out, but do think about how we're going to interact. Value streams and processes. So it's concerned with how the various parts of the organisation work in an integrated and coordinated way. So it's really making sure we have a coherent organisation. So we've broken it up however we want. We've got server team, network team, desktop team, security team, but when we're delivering services to our customer, do all the bits of our organisation, all the practices, all the functions, all the roles work in a coherent way so that all the different value streams deliver efficiently and effectively for our customers. That's and again, what we're focused on ultimately is that co-creation of value for our customers. So that's what we're looking at in this dimension. Looking at each of the activities and saying, is that the most efficient way? And sometimes, again, there's whole methodologies around doing this, but you might find a particular value stream and you can say, well, actually, this value stream it's going through several roles. So we've got role A and then role B and then role C and then role D. And actually, it made much more sense if just one person did it. Yeah, one person, one role did the whole thing. And we didn't break it down between these different teams. Just let one person do it. Or it might be, the other way. You've got one person doing it, but it requires some specialist skills, and it would be much more efficient if we broke it down a little bit and had specialists doing several bits, maybe some workflow in between. Maybe no people at all, maybe automation, who knows? But that's what we're looking at. Have we got a coherent, efficient, effective organisation to deliver to the customer? So there you can see, for the first time, the ITIL service value chain, and we're obviously going to drill down into that and look at all the components. But for now, we're just looking at a value stream. So as opposed to the service value system, a value stream is a series of steps an organisation takes to create and deliver products and services to consumers. So it's basically a path through that service value chain. So let me think. Just to give you a very simple example, if you go to our website and buy an exam code from us, your order will come in via an email to us and will be picked up by whoever's on duty at the time, and they will take that order and go into Passport, which is the PeopleCert system, and they will order your voucher, and once they've typed in your name and email address and selected the voucher you want and whether you want Take 2, they'll confirm it. We'll get a confirmation email from PeopleCert, and you'll get the voucher directly from PeopleCert as well. So that's part of our process, because we can't, unfortunately, PeopleCert don't have an API. I've asked them for an API. They don't provide an API at the moment, so we have to manually order the voucher, which is why there's sometimes a variation. We guarantee it within 24 hours. Normally it's a few minutes, but it just depends how busy we are and how many orders we're getting and so on. And we work UK hours as well. We're not a 24/7 organisation. So if you're in Australia or US and you're outside hours, it might take a little bit longer. But the rest is automated. So you'll also get some automated emails from our website. Thank you for your order, giving you your invoice, giving you access the download link so you can download the sample exam papers and so on. So that's one path through the value chain for us, and that's the way individuals tend to access us. When organisations buy from us, so we've had organisations buy, say, 80 Prince 2 training courses and exams, then that's a different process. I prepare a quote. It's usually me preparing the quote. I send it to them, they accept it, ultimately they pay it. Once it's paid, then we deliver the course. We book differently from PeopleCert as well. So if we don't manually type in 80, we can load a spreadsheet up and do it more efficiently. So that's a different value chain. Different value stream through the value chain. And simple organisation, there's 2 or 3 ways through value streams through the value chain. Obviously, more complex organisations, bigger organisations have many different ways through. So a value stream, a combination of the organisation's value chain activities. A process, again, I won't read the definition out, you know what a process is. In ITIL version 3, they used to refer to incident management as a process. And they obviously now refer to it as a practice. And the reason is because it's not a process, it's an abstraction of some work we do. A process is really what I just described in terms of log on to Passport, select online, select, add new, type in. That's a process. It's a series of steps, a set of interrelated
or interactive activities, and so on, what it says on the slide. And again, it's in blue. You need to know that definition. It's in the app, and also it's in the glossary. All the definitions that come up in those little light blue boxes are in the ITIL glossary that you get when you purchase the exam code. So the same structure, value chain, value streams, process procedures and work instructions applies to specific services. Yeah, so as we said, we can have lots of different services, and we would look at that same abstraction for each one to make sure, or to try and improve the service and make it as efficient and as effective as we can. We're looking at what the generic delivery model is. So generic delivery model is kind of what we do most of the time, 80%, the old Pareto principle, 80%, 80-20 rule. What do we do 80% of the time? Let's make sure we've got a generic delivery model for that. For the other 20%, when things are a little bit different, somebody orders the wrong exam. Oh, I meant to order Prince 2 Agile, but I ordered Prince 2. Can I change it? All right, yeah. We can go in and do things a little bit differently. We may not have procedures. Don't try and create procedures for everything, because you'll be there forever and it'll be a waste of time. So just create procedures for the stuff you do most of the time, and then make sure you've got skilled, intelligent, knowledgeable people who can work out the other 20%, the occasional stuff that you maybe do once a year. And understand, what value streams are involved in, who or what performs them. Gone into enough detail that. So that's the 4 dimensions of service management. There's only two questions in the exam on the 4 dimensions. So basically, you're going to get 2 out of the 4 dimensions. And the way they tend to examine it is, in which dimension will be focused on this. They're normally fairly straightforward. It's one of the sections in our app. There's a section on, just on the 4 dimensions, so you can just go and practice the 4 dimensions questions if you need to, over and over again. Okay, so we're coming on to the service value system. I'm just keeping an eye on time, see how we're getting on. If you just let me have a little drink. I've got a big light on here as well to make sure you can see me nicely, and so hopefully you can see it me okay. But it does get a bit hot with the light on. So the service value system, as I said, it's an abstraction to just help us think about how we work in the real world. So each organisation's service value system has interfaces with other organisations. Yeah, so either delivering value or using partners and suppliers and so on. So we're working our way through that service value system. And the purpose of the service value system is to ensure that the organisation continually co-creates value with all stakeholders through the use and management of products and services. Nice and straightforward. I've mentioned that a few times. That's our ultimate goal, is to co-create value. It's in light blue. You do need to be able to recognise that statement. There's only one question on the service value system. I don't know if I should tell you this, but it was the one question I got wrong when I did the ITIL Foundation. I only got one question wrong. I got 39 out of 40, and I'm still not. I'm not sure I got it wrong. But anyway, that's what they said. There's no VAR on. There's no VAR. You can't go to VAR on the ITIL Foundation exam, unfortunately. It's you just get the result. So we've got a definition. I'll go through these fairly quickly. There is a video on this, but like I say, it's only one question on the exam. So opportunity and demand. So generally the difference is opportunity is maybe nobody else is delivering the service, so it's kind of, we think we could have this service and maybe there'll be a demand for it, but we're not really sure. Whereas demand is, there's definitely a demand in the market. Maybe other people are providing it. Maybe they're not meeting everyone's requirements, but there's definitely a demand in the market for that service from either internal or external customers. People ringing us, can you do this? Will you do that? So if you have a demand for another topic, so if you're interested, I predominantly do Axelos courses. In fact, I got an email through just before we started today from PeopleCert saying they're releasing the new version of MSP, Managing Successful Programs, in Q4 this year. I've been deliberately holding off because I knew it was coming, and I didn't want to spend lots of time, as I did with ITIL version 3, creating a course and then bring out a new version. So I've been hanging off. But if you're interested in MSP or management of portfolio, management of risk, management of value, P3O, project, program, portfolio, management office, I can do all that, or Resilia. So if you're interested in courses on any of those things, or on more ITIL, so the ITIL specialists like create, deliver, support, delivering shareholder value, and so on. If you'd rather see those, then let me know in the comments, either here or drop me an email to inquiries@zindiac.co.uk. Let me know, and I'll try and get some courses up for you on YouTube. Opportunity and demand at the start. I mentioned these. We're trying to deliver value. The guiding principles, a recommendation. So regardless of what products or services we're doing, what the goals, the high-level strategies are, the guiding principle, universal, enduring, they apply to everyone. I'm just trying to get through. I do want to get to the guiding principles. We covered this before. Governance, how people direct and monitor activities, make sure we are doing the right thing, make sure we're doing what we've decided to do as an organisation. So if we've created processes and procedures, we need to make, and policies and strategies, we need to make sure we're following them. And governance is really how we make sure we're doing what we said we were going to do. The service value chain, as we've seen, but that's the definition of it, an operating model which outlines the key activities required to respond to demand and facilitate value realisation. Again, you need to be able to recognise that definition and particularly differentiate that definition as the definition of the service value chain from the definition we saw earlier of the service value system. Practice, a set of organisational resources designed for performing work or accomplishing an objective. And as I said, it's a lower level of abstraction that lets us focus in on particular activities. You might liken it, on the tube map I showed you earlier. So if you thought of the tube map as being maybe the service value chain, a kind of high level abstraction, the practice is more like a map of a particular tube station, a particular underground station, so you can see where the exits and the entrances are, so you can get in and out. But the practice is just that lower level detail on particular activities that we need. And continual improvement, I talked about, it's as much an attitude, a part of the culture as anything that it's the opposite of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, it's what they call in Lean Kaizen. So Lean comes from Toyota, often put together with Six Sigma, which comes from Motorola to form Lean Six Sigma because they're both based on manufacturing. But Kaizen is small incremental improvements, but really it's the philosophy, the idea, the attitude that we can always make things better and we're always trying to make things better. And that's really where we're coming from with continual improvement in ITIL. The most important thing is just to feel we want to make things better and we can make things better and we're going to try to make things better. That's the key there. That's the service value system. Moving on to the service value chain. So in terms of the service value chain, there are 2 questions in the exam on the service value chain. Typically, there is one about the service value chain as a whole, maybe on the definition of what it is, and then there'll be 1 question on the purpose of one of the service value chain activities. And again, this is just a high level of abstraction. So we have demand, we've lost opportunity now. And when I did my train the trainer, I queried that and said, why doesn't it say opportunity anymore? And they kind of went, don't know, we think it should. The people who did the graphics, maybe it wouldn't fit in anymore. Maybe the idea is once you've drilled down into here, you've established that there is demand. It's no longer just an opportunity. But you can see we engage. We have to engage with that demand. We have to engage with the customer. And really engage is the value chain activity that whenever we're talking to the customer, whenever we're engaging the customer in any way, and that might be through advertising. So if we are, whatever, we're sending emails out, we're putting free videos up on YouTube, whatever it is, we've got adding a newspaper, we've got any form of engagement with the customer fits into engage. Plan is fairly straightforward. We plan. In the army, these kind of have the 5 P's. Proper planning prevents poor performance. I think maybe they add an extra P in there somewhere as well, which I won't say online. But yeah, we want to make sure we've got a plan to follow. Again, improve is in there. I said improve is in everywhere. I won't go over that again. In terms of obtain and build, so obtain and build is build or buy. We either buy stuff in, buy hardware in, buy software in, buy network services in, or we build it ourselves. And that goes for whatever product or service you're doing, even if it's not IT. Design obviously is designing the service, and again you go back to the 4 dimensions model to make sure we're designing in a holistic way. We're not just focusing on the technology. Transition, moving the design into operation. So in version 3, you had strategy, design, transition, operation. We went through the life cycle that way, and it's very much in here. It's just slightly differently organised. Delivering support is basically what was operation in version 3. We're delivering the service, we're supporting the service, and they are the 6 value chain activities. So the 6 value chain activities are plan, engage, improve, design and transition, obtain, build, deliver and support. They're the 6. Products and services are what the value chain delivers, what we deliver to the customer to hopefully co-create value. And then in terms of the activities, I won't read all of these slides out. So again, look at the video on YouTube. You'll get 1 question on one of these. So they'll basically say, which value chain activity has the purpose to provide a good understanding of stakeholder needs, transparency and continuing engagement in good relationships with all stakeholders? Is it A, engage? Obviously it is. Is it B, plan? No. Is it C, improve? No. Is it D, obtain, build? No. And as I said, get the app and you can do those questions to your heart's content until you can remember them. So I'll whiz through this bit now, but that's what you need to understand. So it goes through obviously, and the video goes through and talks through them in a bit of detail. Obviously, we want to plan, as I said, design, transition, obtain, build, deliver and support, and improve. Okay, and I whizzed through that because I did. I'm just keeping an eye on time. We've got about 6 minutes before 6 o'clock. But I did want to at least introduce you to the guiding principles. We'll do as much of this as we can. So, the guiding principles
definition there. So it applies all the time. It applies it doesn't matter what service you're providing, who you're providing it to, how big an organisation you are, how big an organisation your customer is. These guiding principles apply, and they apply all the time you're delivering the service. And the first one is focus on value. Second one, start where you are. I'll go through these pretty quickly, so I want to get through to talk about them. Progress history review with feedback. Collaborate and promote visibility. Think and work holistically. Keep it simple and practical. And the final one, optimize and automate. And if any of you have done version 3, in version 3 there were 9 principles. They've reduced it to 7. I've been told they did that because marketing asked them to. They thought 7 was a better number than 9. But kind of everything that was in the 9 principles is in these 7 plus a bit extra. They've just, again, they've just structured it. The abstraction is a little bit different, but the message is the same. The importance of the message is the same. So I'll just go through. It will be fairly quickly because we're running out of time. But I'll just go through each of them in turn. So focus on value. Obviously, I've mentioned several times that ultimately what we're trying to do is deliver value or co-create value with our customer. And that's what focus on value is all about. It's about focusing on that value. So it's just saying, don't get, particularly in IT, there is a tendency, and I know I've done it occasionally myself, is you get your head both literally and metaphorically down in the technology. I've got this technology problem and I really want this bit of hardware and won't talk to this bit of software and I'm going to solve it, and you lose track of the value you're trying to deliver to the customer. And sometimes you don't actually have to resolve the technology problem to get a solution for the customer. Sometimes you can do it in other ways. And that's what it's really trying to do. It's just saying, keep your head up, keep focused on the right thing, focus on the customer and value for the customer, and don't get bogged down in technology and technological issues. And you can see on the slide they talk about the customer user experience, and that's a big part of perceived benefits. Is how people feel about the service. Everything we do should link back to the customer. And this is something from Lean. So in Lean they talk about voice of the customer, voice of the business. So what I'm doing right now, would my customer pay me for it? If yes, then good. That's voice of the customer. It's value added to the customer. That's fine. I should be doing it because it's focused on value. There are some things I need to do because my business needs me to do them. Like pay VAT and stuff. So I need to do those as well. That's voice of the business. But if what I'm doing now isn't required by my customer and isn't required by the business, then it's waste. So stop doing it, get rid of it. And that's Lean is very much about removing waste, and that's where the name comes from, Lean. And this is very much aligned. I didn't mention that with the principles. Axelos haven't made these up. Don't kind of sat in a room and thought, what principles you read? They're very much best practice from other methodologies and frameworks and so on, and not only just from Lean, but definitely focus on value is very Lean. Value change over time and circumstances. So that occurs in 2 ways. So basically, what was valuable certainly 10 years, but even 5 years, a year ago, isn't as valuable today. I mentioned about 5G. So you may still have only a 4G phone, but at some point fairly soon you're going to be kind of saying, well, I need a 5G phone because it's 5G so much better than 4G, and I want to be able to do stuff that I can only do with 5G. And obviously on the slide you've got a graphic showing different ways to pay. And I've got an Apple Watch, and Apple pays my
my preferred method of payment now. I think it's more secure than just using contactless with my credit card, and it just means I don't need to carry my wallet. In fact, all I need is my watch. I don't even need to take my phone, and I can pay, which is particularly useful if I'm out on a run. I don't need to take anything else. The other way value changes over time and circumstances is on at different times, and that's what's shown here with Black Friday. So, payment systems, if I'm a retail organisation, obviously I want to be able to take payment. If my payment systems go down, then I don't want that to happen. I want to be able to take payment. That's really important to me. But if it happens at 6 o'clock, and I'm just looking at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday in August, it's probably not that big a deal. I'm probably not doing that much business. If it happens on Black Friday, it could put me out of business if everything else that could have put me out of business hasn't yet. So it's, that's different. And all businesses have those patterns of business activity where certain systems can be more important to them at certain times of either the day or the month or the year. So we may need extra warranty, extra assurance that the systems are going to work at those times. And we've got much more flexibility in terms of backup and resilience. We don't have to have the same resilience on all our services all year. Yeah. If the resilience is only required for, say, a couple of days during the year, we can just have the resilience on the service for those couple of days. It's eminently possible to do that now. Right, I'm just looking at the time. It is 6 o'clock. I did say I would finish at 6 o'clock, but I can see that I've obviously only done one principle out of the 7, and I do want to do them all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going so until I've got through the principles for you. So hopefully that's okay for you. And it's if you need to leave us, then I hope you've enjoyed it. And give us a thumbs up. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe. You can access the videos for the stuff we haven't covered and won't cover, and anything we've gone through too quickly for you. Don't forget you've got the apps either on the App Store or Google Play, and when you come to take the exam, please go to zinnote.co.uk to purchase your exam code, and it should be cheaper than anywhere else. If it's not, let me know, because it's certainly our intention that it should be the best value for you. Okay, so if you can stay with us, then that's great, and I will move on. You can see there I talked about that lean and value added and non-value added, voice of the business, voice of the customer there on the slide. I won't repeat that. Start where you are. So 2 things to remember with start where you are. Don't think, we're going to throw everything away. Yeah, and really, this is in there because when ITIL first came out, a big mistake a lot of organisations made was, we're adopting ITIL, therefore everything we've been doing in the past is rubbish and we're going to get rid of it and we're going to do ITIL and we're going to follow the manuals. And that was never the intention. As I said, they're not manuals, they're guidance. And the number one principle, high-level principle, not these principles, of ITIL is that do what works. Yeah. So if what you're doing at the moment works for you, works for your customers, carry on doing it, and it almost certainly fits into ITIL. Yeah. So don't automatically throw everything away. But the second thing to remember is sometimes, not very often, sometimes the best thing to do is to throw everything away. So I've only really ever done that once, where we were taking over a managed service from another organisation, and we pretty much we threw everything away. So we had new servers, new network, new desktop, new printers. We didn't have new applications. Well, we had some new applications, so we didn't quite throw everything away, but we threw an awful lot away. But I've got to tell you, we went around that loop several times. Is this really the best way? Is this really
what we want to do before we settled on that. So be careful about it in the exam particularly, because the guidance is start with where you are, look at what's of value, but if there is nothing of value, then you can throw it all away and start again. But don't let that be your default. Measurement's really important in terms of what to keep, what to get rid of. Go to the Gemba again, something from Lean. The Gemba is where the action happens, and what it's saying is you can have all the metrics you like, but sometimes you have to go to the Gemba to find out what's really happening. And the example I used to give on this was homeless people, which I think is still relevant actually. I know say in the UK at the start of lockdown they kind of found homes for all the homeless people, which why they hadn't done that before I don't know. Well, I kind of do know, but they should have done. But anyway, but yeah, the government, we're kind of saying everything's wonderful and the economy's doing great and with my job, I was travelling around a lot around the country, and I was seeing all these homeless people sleeping on the street, and going, I don't care what the stats say. This isn't right. People should not be sleeping on the streets in the UK in 2019, as it was then, because I haven't really done much travelling in 2020. That's not right. That was going to the Gemba. The other thing I noticed as well was lots of empty properties. So the combination of the two, lots of brand new build. You see all these new builds going up in all the cities. Many of them just owned by investors, and they just keep them empty, and they're just using them, like the tulip bubble. But it's some domestic investors, some worldwide investors, and we're never building enough properties while the people who own them keep them empty. So that's what Go to the Gemba is all about. Go to the Gemba is go and look where the action is and find out what's really happening. Obviously applying it to your service. Measuring can sometimes affect the results. And I've got a picture of a runner because I like to think of myself as a runner. I haven't been able to run for a while because of my knee, which is just killing me. But yeah, if you know you're measuring, if you know you're measuring your time, you can I'll go for a 5k personal best, or if you know you're being measured, it affects the results. So we need to be careful. And you can see that when a measurement becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And it can work both ways. Obviously, it can be a target that we stretch to achieve, but also it can be, well, we've made the target, so I don't need to do any better. And obviously that is not what we want. We want continual improvement. We want to be always trying to stretch. So you might think about having multiple targets. I haven't really got time to talk about that, but that's a good thing to look at. I won't go into the application of them. I'm just giving you a general overview, but again, obviously the videos go into all the detail. Progress iteratively with feedback. So that's the Agile, that's the Scrum principle. And it's really just saying, don't try and do everything in one go. Do a little bit, deliver it. And the great thing about that is it reduces risk, because the smaller amount of work you do before you deliver something, the less likely is the world will have changed, that the requirements will have changed, that the customer will have changed their mind. And also, the customer can't gain any value until you've delivered something. So if you take 6 months to deliver something, that's 6 months of risk that you deliver something to the customer, that's not quite right, and you have to do something again. But it's also 6 months of missed opportunity. Whereas if you just delivered something in a week, or it might have not added much value, but it's some value, and they can be gaining that value, and then deliver something else a week later, or maybe it depends how long your sprints are. And again, the shorter the sprint, the less risk, you reduce the risk, but it's harder to deliver something of value. The longer the sprint, the easier it is to deliver something of real value, but the more risk there is. So you have to kind of balance between the two. And obviously it's depends what you're delivering. If you're interested more in progressive delivery with feedback, if you obviously the online videos for ITIL give you more information, but also our Prince to Agile course as well will give you more detail on that. So if you go into the Scrum sections around that, it gives you lots of detail on Scrum as well. So if you're particularly interested in the progressively with feedback, and it's definitely, as I said, one of the most popular courses I deliver is Scrum, and many organisations are looking to adopt Agile as a methodology. Next one, collaborate and promote visibility. And I mentioned this before about, transparency, but visibility, transparency is the idea that the more people we can share information with, the more people we can share a problem with, the more eyes on it, the better solution we get, rather than just having one or two people look at it. Swarming, which we cover later in the course, around incident management is aligned with that promote visibility, where we have a problem, we're not really sure, is it a network problem, is it a server problem, is it a desktop problem? Let's get lots of eyes on it, let's swarm around it, let's all look at it, collaborate together, work out what the root cause is, who's best placed to resolve it, let them get on and resolve it, and the rest of us will go off and do something else. So that's a great example of collaborating and promoting visibility. Obviously, you have to do that within the bounds of information security. But right people, correct roles, better buy-in, more relevance, more likely to create more value. Again, no silos, things we've talked about before, so I won't repeat. And again, this is specific stuff for the exam that may well come up in the exam. It's in the syllabus, so I won't cover it now. It's not really about understanding, but it helps your understanding. Sorry, it's the things you need to memorise for the exam. So that's in the pre-recorded videos. So I'm just going through those to get to the next one. There. You can see a that's just a Kanban board, which again comes from Lean, we again, if you're interested in Kanban, there's a video dedicated to it in our Prince to Agile course, so you can look at that. Right, finally, the next principle: think and work holistically. And obviously, again, when we covered the 4 dimensions model, I talked about the reason it's there is to make sure we have a holistic solution. So not surprisingly, when we're thinking and working holistically, we're referring to the 4 dimensions model. And again, in simple terms, it's saying don't just focus on technology, but think about the other dimensions, think about how the technology will be used, think about it in a more holistic way, and that helps with making sure we get the right solution and we add more value to our customer. It's not just a one size fits all. And particularly, maybe laptops. Laptops used in different environments. So if you're using a laptop predominantly in office, that's one thing. If you're going to be using it in a public space, then maybe you need a privacy filter, or maybe we need some software that stops you using certain functionality in a public place. So we work out, are you connected to the corporate LAN, or are you connected to Wi-Fi, or are you connected to 4G? And depending on what your connection is and how secure you are and where you are, affects what services you can access. I don't know if any of you do it, but if you do online banking on your phone, always do it over 4G or 5G if you've got it. Don't do it over public Wi-Fi of any sort. Yeah, it's not as secure, so 4G is more secure. But it's having that holistic view. Again, here they're talking about, which they mentioned later, but the principles do interact. So all the principles, think about, don't just do one, do all 7, and think about how they interact together. Keep it simple and practical. Yeah, so keep it simple. You probably heard of KISS, not just the band, but keep it simple, stupid. They used to say. But yeah, keep it. Don't make things more complicated than they need to be. So what we're not looking for is a simple solution because we're not capable of creating a complex solution. We're looking for what we describe to me as the simplicity on the far side of complexity. Yeah, so we understand things so well we can come up with a simple solution, and also it's simple from the customer's perspective, so it's not necessarily simple for us. So the example I like to use is unlocking my laptop. So when I come to unlock my laptop, as you may do, you kind of click on you if you've got multiple users of it, or if not, you need to type your password in, which isn't a great inconvenience, but it's simpler if you've got a laptop that can do facial recognition and just recognises you and unlocks. Mine doesn't do that, but mine does work with my watch. So if I'm wearing my watch and my watch is unlocked, presumably via Bluetooth, the laptop will connect to my watch and go, it's my app, and unlock. So I don't have to type my password in. So that's a simpler solution for me, the customer. So Apple have kept it simple for me, but obviously for them, there's some fairly complex or moderately complex software doing that for me. And I think that's one of the things I've generally found with Apple products is they're quite good at that sort of thing, of it kind of being able to drag and drop things, and it just kind of works without without too much effort. So they've kept it simple. That's quite a good way of doing it. So that's keep it simple and practical. Is for the customer. I mentioned this before in terms of processes and rules for exception. So don't try to create a process for everything. Create a process for the stuff you do most of the time, and then rules for if we have an occurrence that doesn't fit with our process, then we have some rules to follow. Some general guidance that we can follow. Again, we've got, that's talking about waste and getting rid of waste and value and looking at a process and can we simplify it. And again, there's whole methodologies on that. There's a bit more detail in the online videos. I'm going to skip through now. And finally, optimize and automate. And you're going to see much more of it. If you haven't already, you're going to see much more of this over the coming weeks, months and years. So if the last 5 or 10 years has been the big move to mobile, which I think it has, the next 5 or 10 years is going to be the big move to automation. And I'm already seeing it in my business in just little things. So there's various software I use now for receipts. So if I get a receipt for something, I basically take a photograph of it with my mobile phone, and that sucks it into my accounting system with all the numbers in. And then when the bill comes in, it just automatically matches them up, and it goes in and it correlates the two. If I get an email invoice comes in, it does the same thing. So it picks up the invoice from the email and pings it into my accounting system. It's all automated. So that's just a basic thing that I'm using right now. But more and more of that type of thing is going to occur going forward. So definitely look to where we can optimize and automate. There's a ton of solutions out there. I won't try and go through them all, but be aware of where the bottlenecks are, where you could be more efficient, and try and remove the drudge. They talk about the drudge. So if you've got anything where you kind of anything you can do where you basically just switch off your mind, you just kind of repetitive work. That's what we want to automate. The stuff where you're having to think and be creative and communicate with other people and collaborate, that's more difficult to automate. we can use some automation to help us do that, but focus on getting rid of the drudge if you can. So I think that is about it. Again, there's more details on optimize and automate on the video course. Don't forget all the guiding principles. So that takes us to the ITIL practices. So it's kind of half the exam, more or less, that we've covered, and then the rest is going into the details of the ITIL practices, making sure you know the purpose of the 15 and then the other 7 in more detail. Obviously on the video course, all that detail is in there. The app gives you access. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I can see we've got some thumbs up, which is great. So I hope you have enjoyed the course. I didn't quite keep to time. I wasn't sure. Like I said, it's the first time I've done it in this format. So we were 20 minutes over. But hopefully you found it useful, and I know the pre-recorded videos, they've got all the information that you need. I know they can be a bit dry, and so maybe you've enjoyed this in terms of being a little bit more interactive for you. So I will say good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening or the rest of your day if you're in America and you're starting your day. Enjoy the rest of your day, and as I said, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll be posting lots more videos, and if there's anything you particularly want to see, let me know and I will try and post that for you. But until then, goodbye and stay safe.